Hi, it's Athena Mariah with Hardshell Slimy Snail Productions, and today I'm going to make a charcuterie leaf plate, or just a leaf plate because I'm probably still saying charcuterie wrong. Anyway, to start off with, I did make a design out of a foam sheets. So I just bought a 20 pack of foam sheets online. It comes in different colors, and these happen to be 12 inches by 17.5 inches. And it's great because you could use a pencil and draw out your design. So I made just by freehand kind of a big mama leaf plate, a more medium-sized teenager leaf plate, and then a little baby leaf plate. Another thing that we will need, which came in really handy, is I keep everything, and this is just foam that came in some packaging from a shipment, and so it's about 1/4 inch thick. And I cut it into what the foot is going to be on the bottom. So the foot's going to go around this foam, and this will support the bottom as it's drying, because otherwise what I found when I didn't have this underneath it, it would start to sag, and we don't really want that. We want it to be a flat plate in the middle. And so this just really helps support the drying clay so that it doesn't sag. You can of course use a rolling pin to roll out your clay, but as you make bigger projects, it does become a little bit more difficult to use a rolling pin to get a really even consistency. I'm very fortunate enough to have a slab roller, so today I will be using my slab roller. These are a couple plates, ooh, if you could see them, that I've already made. And they're drying right now. Okay, let's make some plates. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my clay ready to fit into the slab roller. And the way I do that is I grab my design. I'm going to make the medium-sized teenager leaf. I want my clay to be the width of my leaf. So I'll keep that. And the way I do that, this is already wedged clay, is I throw it down kind of at an angle towards me, and that stretches the clay. And then I could take my leaf and see if it fits it. I want some buffer around the edges of the clay, so I'm gonna stretch it a little bit more. Okay. That should be good. I've got my clay, and the width goes where there's a little bit of edge. I don't know if you could see it. Gonna get my canvas, and you feed the canvas through the middle. And then you flip one edge up, and then you put the clay sandwiched in between the two canvases, going long ways. I'm gonna roll this down to be 3/8 of an inch thick. And the thinner I go, there's a lot more resistance. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and grab some sheetrock planks to put underneath the clay. I will use 2 sheetrock sheets, so I'll have another one handy. So the first one you put underneath the canvas and slide it underneath and try to situate it to where it's nice and in the center, and then carefully peel off the top layer of canvas. Put that away. Now using your rubber rib, gonna go ahead and just smooth out the canvas pattern that was on the clay. I will go over smoothing the top of the clay usually 3 or 4 times. Now I'm going to take my other plank of drywall, gonna center it on the top of it, and then I'm gonna flip the whole thing. Flip it. Okay, so you could remove this top piece of drywall. It's done. Go ahead and remove your canvas. Now we're gonna smooth this side. Now, using our knife tool and our template, center it on your clay and go ahead and cut out your pattern. And then I like to go all the way to the edge of the clay when I'm done. That way I could just peel up that corner. Could take off our template and then just take off this excess and re-wedge this clay and use it for something else. If you have a stamp design that you use for your signature, this is a good time to use your stamp while the clay is still pretty moist. And so I will go ahead and center my signature. If you carve your signature, then you might want to wait a little bit until the clay has firmed up. Now I'm gonna let this clay sit and rest and dry up a little bit, because if I really start working on it now, it's just too wet. I use pretty moist clay. So we're gonna let this just sit on this drywall sheet. The drywall sheet helps to evenly dry your clay. And then we will make the foot and smooth out the edges. Okay, so now I'm going to use some of the excess clay that I had left over. I'm going to roll it into a nice firm ball, and then we're going to roll out a foot to put on the bottom of the plate. It's always good to kind of get a cylinder started. Then you just keep your fingers spread as you roll it out. Try to make even pressure on your hands. And I'm going to try to roll this out to be about 1/4 of an inch. And my son is doing laundry, so the benefits of having your art studio in the garage is you get to hear my laundry being done, or his laundry being done. Okay, I have a towel always handy and a tub of water with a sponge. We'll set that down. I've got my slip. I've got my foam bottom piece. I have a smoothing tool so I could smooth the clay out once I've made my foot. And I like to put my slip on with an old paintbrush. And then I have my scoring tool for slipping and scoring, but you could always use a knife tool to do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and smooth the edges out with my finger. That's why you wanna make sure your finger's clean and dry, because we really don't want to add any more moisture to our clay. It's already very soft. And I'm going to smooth these edges out on both sides. This is not something you want to do after you put your foot on. You really want to make sure this is done first. And in the crease of the leaf stem, you could use your tool to kind of get in that edge to make sure that's nice and smooth, because if it's not smooth and you go to fire it, anything that isn't smooth like that, it could crack. And we don't want any cracks. We want it to be nice and smooth. Okay, so now this whole bottom side has been smoothed. I'm gonna flip it and smooth the other side. And I'm just kind of going around the edges carefully. And then I'm gonna flip it really carefully. Set it down nice and gentle, because my clay is still relatively wet, it will warp and stretch the more you move it. And we don't really want that. We want it to keep its shape. So just got to be careful how much we move it. Okay, so I've smoothed out my top side. We're gonna flip it back over to the bottom side very gently. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to take my foam and place it in the middle, kind of center it, and then I'm going to take my rolled out clay and roll it around. My knife tool, I'm going to go ahead and cut the top off and just center this and then cut the top off of this one. And now I have a rough idea as to where it's gonna go. And then I will use my tool and really carefully, like not a lot of pressure at all, I'm just gonna mark around where my coil is. That way I know where to score it. So now I have my outline, and I'm going to use my scoring tool and score around the edge of it. And then I will score the top of my rolled out clay. And I will use my slip and just get that nice and covered in the little grooves, reservoirs that you created. Then we're just gonna put the slip side down. Then I just want to double check that this still fits in there. Yep, fits good. And now I will use my little wooden smoothing tool and just smooth the outer edges and then the inner edges. Okay, so now I'm going to put the foam in the middle and I'm gonna flip it with the foam in the middle. Don't want to mess it up. And once again, I hope it's not too wet. I really probably should let it dry a little bit more, but we're gonna see if it works. Ooh, okay. So that keeps the bottom nice and flat. And then just using my hands, I'm gonna curl up the edges and make it kind of leaf shape. If you wait till it's too dry, it'll be brittle and it'll crack. So there's just like a sweet spot where the clay is still wet enough to manipulate, but not too wet where it'll be too heavy and sag. So I'm kind of using my left hand to prop it up, and then my right hand, I'm smoothing the clay, kind of manipulating it into the shape that I want it to be. And you want to do it really slow because you don't want the clay to crack. You don't want to put too much pressure. I use paper towels and I rolled them up. You can always use these to support your clay as you're kind of working it around. And then I want my stem to be flat so that you could kind of rest your spoon or your little knife on the edge of the plate in the little leaf section. So really carefully, I'm gonna put pressure underneath it and then kind of pull it towards me because I don't want it to crack. Might even get it a little wet. You could even use your tool to put a little reservoir. Now to do the veins inside of the leaf, you can use a dull pencil to kind of outline roughly where you're gonna do it. And then I'm using my diamond core tool, which is a PF1, to carve out the leaf design. And then tomorrow, when it's not as wet, I'm gonna go over these lines with my Kemper tool and just make them a little bit smoother. And any of the rough edges I could kind of smooth over, but because it's so wet right now, if I try doing that too much, it's just gonna mess it up. But essentially that's how you make a leaf plate. There it is. And I will bisque fire this and then glaze it. Ooh. How do you pronounce charcuterie board?
In a name of French origin, and the French pronounce the U. Charcuterie. Charcuterie.
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie. Charcuterie.
To learn how to pronounce food words.
Charcuterie. 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 Charcuterie.
Go to hardshellslimysnail.com right now and buy all of it. Buy it all right now!
Oh, yep, that's my boy.